So you've just been out and bought your very first telephoto lens. You're excited, you've took it out, and just like me when I got mine, you haven't got a clue how to use it, and you come back and you're not happy with the results, especially with birds in flight. Well, let me tell you now, the problem is you. And don't worry, because that's a good thing. It's not your lens, it's you, and we can fix you. And in this video, I'll show you what I learned to get better bird in flight photographs. Hello and welcome to the channel if this is your first time here. If you're returning, welcome back. It's good to see you again. So this video is going to look at two things: editing your bird photos in Lightroom, and I've put two raw photos in the description on the video for you to practice along, and we're going to talk about your lens and the results you're getting. Only because I know what it's like, same as you buy a telephoto lens, you want to get out there, you want to get birds in flight, and you're really excited, and you've got all these fantastic, great expectations, and you go out and you photograph the birds, and you come back and you look at them, and you get frustrated and you get disappointed. And I used to blame the lens. Now the lens behind me, it's not a 10 grand, 15 grand high-end lens, because I can't afford one of those. I don't know about you. It is a Sigma 150 to 600 mm. It wasn't the most expensive lens in the world, so I don't expect to have the same results as some of the high-end, really expensive lenses. But this lens, I can still get absolutely perfect, absolutely fantastic bird in flight photos. And when I initially bought the lens, and I started using it, I got frustrated. Wow, this is the lens. Why did I waste my money? I should have bought something more expensive. But the problem was me, not my lens. And you might have the same problem, which is good because we can fix you. We can't necessarily fix the lens. Let's have a look at some of the photos in Lightroom. What makes this image work? I've got the bird against some trees or something in the background other than sky. When I went out, and I was really excited because I got this new lens, I was probably just like you, and I would tend to get, oh, there's a bird, get the camera up, aim and shoot, and get loads of photos, ending up looking like this. It's just a silhouette against a white background, and you'll probably, like me, I had thousands of these. You're always going to get a silhouette if you aim your lens up and shoot at a bird against a bright sky. It can work. Here I'm eye level with the bird. It's that dull overcast day, but it kind of works. The bird's lit from above, and I'm at least at eye level with the bird. Again, it kind of works in this photo because the bird's at eye level, but sometimes just having a stark plain white background doesn't work. So if you can get a background in, that's great. But if you do, just try and keep the background as plain as possible. Now, this is a fantastic shot, or it would be a fantastic shot, apart from the fact that the background is just too noisy. And then when we get to this bird, we've got that lovely out of focus background. One of the main reasons for that is I'm zoomed all the way out at 600 mm. I'm quite far back from the bird, and the trees in the background are quite far away. So my depth of field at f6.3, which this photo is quite narrow, and that's what leads to that effect. In this photograph, yes, I'm a long way from the bird. Let's just see what my focal length was. It was 554 mm, so not zoomed all the way out, but the problem with this one is the bird is quite close to the trees. So with my depth of field, I've caught the bird and I've also caught the trees in focus. And the trees are a bit noisy and it's hard to make out the bird. So the first thing I always do to a photo in Lightroom is just set the color profile. So I want the colours to be replicated more or less what they were on the day. The weather was dull and overcast. It was the end of August, right in the middle of Wales. So, it's the end of summer. So I'm not expecting it to be brilliant sunshine. And I'm going to set my Adobe color profile to standard. You can see the difference if we set it to landscape. So that's the first thing. Now the next thing I want to do with this photo is just look at the composition. Only because it's great, but we've got this little bit of sky, this little highlight area in the right hand side, and that is instantly just grabbing my attention. So I want to get rid of that. So if we go over to cropping, I think this is going to look really nice in the 16:9 ratio, and then I'm just going to crop this down just to get rid of that sky, and then I'm just going to keep the bird more or less on the third of the screen here. Because the bird's flying from right to left, I always tend to give it a bit of space where the bird's flying into. After I've done the profile and the composition, is just adjust the color. Is the color right? Now for me, this color works well. There's nothing wrong with the white balance, and there's nothing wrong with the color. If we had a problem with the white balance, obviously we can just warm the picture up, or we can cool the picture down. But as it was shot on the day in camera, I'm pretty okay with the white balance and the color. So what I usually tend to do next is push the tonal range of the photograph, the maximum between the darkest black and the lightest white. So I always tend to come over to the curve and just bump up some of the whites, and then just darken some of the blacks just to give it a nice contrast. I'm not going to do too much adjustments. It's just fine tuning the original photo. So now I'm happy with the color. I just want to separate out the bird from the background. Now I've kind of already got that, because I've got that lovely out of focus background and the bird is sharp, but not quite sharp, and I'll explain that in a minute. Now you can see the tonal range between the bird and the background is kind of similar, and whenever you look at classic oil paintings or paintings in general, what's in the distance is kind of always lighter than what's in the foreground. So if we take that classic technique of painting, I'm just going to lighten up the background a little bit. So for this, I'm going to go to masking. I'm going to select the bird, but I'm going to select it as an object. So if I go down to objects, and I'm just going to make sure that box selection is selected, and all I'm going to do is draw around the bird. And because I've already got that out of focus background, Lightroom should do, and it has a decent job of selecting the bird. Now I'm going to duplicate and invert this mask to get my background mask. So if I click on the three arrows on my mask and just go to duplicate and invert mask, there we go, we've got the background. So all I'm going to do, well, I'm going to do a couple of things really, is just increase the exposure slightly, and then I'm going to go down to texture just to give the background a little bit more bokeh or out of focus. We could, there's a nifty little setting in Lightroom on the color page where we could apply a lens blur, but I don't think it needs it, and that's probably for another video. The only other thing I'm going to do with the background is just go back to my masking, create a linear gradient, and then just drag it over from left to right to about there, and then I'm just going to darken this area a little bit, just so we get a sense of maybe the light was coming in from this direction on the day. Let's just put the exposure up a little bit, just ever so subtle, so we can see before and after, because that tree is catching quite a bit of light and it's a little bit of a distraction, but I think that should be okay now. Now the reason the bird is sharp is because I've got a high shutter speed, and if we just look at the information on the metadata, I've got my shutter speed of 2,500ths of a second. If you're zoomed all the way out to say 600mm, those birds are going to go past your lens a lot faster than if you were zoomed all the way out. So hence that's one of the reasons to have a high shutter speed, and that's one of the mistakes I made in the beginning, is not having a fast enough shutter speed. There is a thinking that if your focal length, if it's at 600, you should always have your shutter speed twice your focal length. So your shutter speed should be 1200 if you can have that setting on your camera. I can't think off the top of my head, but this is for stationary objects, stationary subjects without a camera with image stabilization. So that this rule, I guess, kind of came along before image stabilization. But because we're dealing with birds in flight and they move so fast, I always tend to go for a shutter speed of 2000 or over. Basically, whatever you can get away with how much light you've got on the day. So if it's a really bright sunny day, you can probably bump that shutter speed up to 3000, 3500. And I always have the ISO on auto, and I have the metering mode on highlights. So the camera will analyze and adjust the ISO based on the brightest area of the image, just so we prevent clipping those highlights. And then again, with your aperture at about f8, f11, if you've got plenty of light, you're not going to underexpose, and your ISO is not going to hit the roof. So I always tend to set the shutter speed high. I always tend to have the aperture around about f8, f11, or if there's a aperture that's ideal for your lens, which gives you the sharpest results, stick it on that aperture, have a little practice and see what you get. When I first started bird photography, I was always under the thinking that the widest you can have the aperture open, the better. Now at 6.3, and the bird was 20, 30, 40 meters away, it looks sharp. But if we zoom in and look at the wings, not as sharp as we would expect. Now that might be a little bit, the wings are moving at an incredible pace, but we've got the eyes of the bird sharp, which makes this photo work. And the problem is the aperture is probably open a bit too wide, and my aperture at 600 millimeters is wide open. The depth of field is a bit too narrow on the Sigma lens. It's an f5 to 6.3, so when I'm zoomed all the way back at 150 mil, it's going to be 5 f5. When I'm zoomed all the way in at 600 mil, it's going to be 6.3. So the aperture gets smaller the more you zoom in. So it's caught the bird's eyes, but because the wingspan is just outside of that depth of field, they're ever so slightly out of focus. And if the camera was to focus on the wings, if the eye tracking didn't work, or your focus area didn't work, and focused on the wing closest to us, we might have the eyes and the head out of focus, and obviously that's just a dud photo. Probably wouldn't be able to do anything with that. But because I was at a feeding station with hundreds of red kites around, I could edge my bets and have my aperture wide open and kind of risk having a very shallow depth of field. So basically my advice to you is when you first start using a telephoto lens is just drop that aperture down to f8, f11, and see if it gives you better results. If you've got your shutter speed and your aperture set to how you like it, but the ISO is going through the roof, then I would question, have you got enough light for the day? Is it worth going out? If it's getting towards dusk, then it might be time to knock it on the head. Now with the background sorted, I'm kind of happy with it. And there's two things, or maybe three things, that I like to do just to make the photograph ready to be put out there. And the first one is just to sharpen the bird a little bit. So on your color page, if we go to sharpening, just going to bump it up slightly to about there, just to sharpen it up a little bit. So now I've sharpened the image, I just want to get rid of just a tiny little bit of imperfections. Maybe there was some dust in the air like here. So I'm just going to go around looking for any imperfections, any sensor spots where there's dust on the sensor or the lens, and it seems to be okay. There's just this here. Now if I was to get this printed out, if you was to look at that, you might think it's a little glitch or an imperfection in the printing process. So if I go to my remove tool, make sure I've got it on heal, I'm just going to put a tiny little dot on there, and there you go, it's automatically selected where it's going to take the healing healing area from, and that's fine. With the ISO on this photo, the ISO is 3200. Now on my Sony, that, looking at it, it doesn't look too bad. You might be a aesthetic choice that you leave a bit of noise in the image. You know, it looks a bit grainy, almost got that film kind of look. I'm just going to show you how to denoise this, just in case you want to denoise it. So we just need to go to noise reduction, and then I'm just going to leave it on the default because that is kind of doing a decent job. So let's just denoise this image. So I'm happy with that. I'm not going to do any more to it because my art teacher back 20 odd years ago said to me, don't overdo it. Once it's done, it's done. Stop tinkering with it. So I've left a link to the raw photo for this photo. I'm not going to cover it in this video because it just make the video far too long, but have a crack at it. See how you get on. If you can do things you think are better, that's brilliant. Let me know in the comments, but just let me know in the comments how you get on. If you're like me and you've got a full-time job and family commitments and you don't get time to often to go out, the back garden is totally fine. I've got blue tits, robins, and you know, I've got robin photos in the past that will make fantastic Christmas cards for family, or sell them, and they work well as the winter entries into calendars, December, January, especially over Christmas. So, you know, make the most of what you got is basically what I'm trying to say. Birds are the most active in the morning or at the end of the day at dusk. Also, when you're starting out and you want to practice and you want to, you know, get a lot of experience under your belt, is just go where the birds are. Go to your local pond, nature reserve, feeding station like I did. You're probably going to get ducks and pigeons and waterfowl and all the common birds that you see. But it's a good starting point. It's good practice, and also do your research. You know, feeding stations, on social media, people put a lot of photos where they've seen a barn owl, but please, please, please respect the animals. Don't go encroaching on anyone's property. Don't put the birds in danger or disrupt them. It takes time, and a lot of it is luck. A lot of it is just the opportunity came along. I didn't go seeking the opportunity out. It just happened. I'll let you know now that 9 times out of 10, you'll come home with nothing and you'll be disappointed. But it's that 10th time that you go out and you get a barn owl, or you see a buzzard, or a peregrine falcon or whatever. And those make up for the other 9 times where you came home with absolute garbage. So don't give up. It's not the lens, it's you. If that, without offending you, but it was me in the beginning. And you know, you've got this for the rest of your life. There's plenty of opportunities to go out there and get birds in flight. But thank you for watching. If you did like the video, all I'll ask is just give it a thumbs up, just so that it helps my channel and promotes this video to other people just like you and me. Thank you.